Night in the Woods is a narrative-driven game that follows the story of Mae Borowski, who drops out during her second year of college to return to her hometown, a dead-old former mining town called Possum Springs. The story of the game deals with millennial angst, economic frustration, mental health, and just a pinch of cosmic horror. Like all good stories. There's a fair amount of platforming to be done, both in exploring the town itself and in the handful of dream sequences. Mae can balance on electrical wires and use them to reach rooftops to find more people to talk to and things to interact with. There's also a sort of Mario 64-esque triple jump thing where your third jump while continuously running will be higher and you need to use that to reach some heights. The platforming is functional, but kind of superficial. I wouldn't say that it really lends much to the game, but it never felt like it was getting in the way of the story or anything. Apart from simply exploring the town and talking to people, Night in the Woods mixes in quite a few different minigames like shoplifting, friend feeding, and a cool, if a bit underused rhythm game. And even a pretty well fleshed out hack and slash game within a game called Demon Tower. It's actually rad as hell and uses a cool mechanic where each level you complete reduces your maximum health while increasing your ability to dodge. It's good, it could have just been a standalone game. The meat of Night in the Woods, though, is its dialogue. The dialogue is extremely well written, and I know every other person who's ever said anything about this game's dialogue has said the exact same thing, but that's because it's friggin' true, so shut up. It's all so remarkably natural, like the way people actually talk, with some allowance made for humor, of course. On the topic, the humor is also excellent. It's all very morbid and self-effacing in a way that's just right up my alley. In the dialogue, the player often has the chance to fill in Mae's responses. There aren't many cases where the different responses will have an effect on how the story turns out. Rather, it usually just changes the course of the conversation. The game will often explicitly put you in situations where your options are literally the two worst things to say at the time. I really appreciate that they didn't try to turn Mae into some blank slate character like a shitty Bethesda game or whatever. Who Mae is already determined, and your input as the player usually just determines how Mae's characteristics are articulated to the player. The other characters in Night in the Woods are also very well made. The game does an excellent job of creating characters that are complex, but where the complexity is communicated very clearly. It doesn't pull any stupid character arc plot twists out of nowhere. You'll understand what most characters' main deal is very quickly, even if Mae doesn't. For most of the days, the game flow is simply wake up at 4 p.m., check your email, talk to your mom, wander around town and talk to whichever secondary characters you want to, and then decide which of your friends you want to hang out with that day. Just like me in real life, except for the part about talking and friends and the mom and going outside. Yeah. So the main decision you're making in terms of how the story is going to play out is whether you want to hang out with the angry, sarcastic, but unmistakably mature B, Mae's somewhat estranged childhood friend, or Gregg. Gregg Rulz OK, and you can commit all sorts of cool felonies with him, and also his boyfriend Angus shows up sometimes. As well as your main friends, there are a few minor scenes with secondary characters that don't advance time at all and are used to expand on some of the side townspeople. What event plays out when spending time with Gregg or B is determined by what day it is, not by how many times you've spent time with them. So it's not like Persona, where you're advancing through a set sequence of events, and actually seeing them all will require at least 2 playthroughs. Also, which events you've seen and what choices you made in them will often be subtly reflected in the dialogue. Certain conversations can be triggered on different days in different areas, which can create some very interesting replayability potential. But that brings me to literally my only problem with the game. The save system is a pain in the ass. It's all autosaves all the time. It gets frustrating because there are a few things you can miss permanently, and if you screw them up, the only thing you can do is start an entirely new playthrough. The saving is as permanent and restrictive as friggin' Dark Souls. That's right, I'm comparing Night in the Woods to Dark Souls. Do something about it. Please don't do anything about it. Hopefully at some point it'll get patched to have manual saves and multiple save slots or something. Does it really interfere with the game? No. Honestly, it's mostly just a bunch of achievements that are taunting me. Shut up, I have a problem, I know. The game uses these simple shapes and flat colors in a way that reminds me a lot of the Eric Carle books from when I was a kid. It all looks like a children's book, except everyone's depressed and swears a lot. Even with these simple features though, the game does an excellent job of conveying expressions using minor changes to characters' faces. The music is also good. I'm terrible at describing music, so bear with me for a hot second here. While on the surface the music seems quite cheerful, I really feel like there are sad undertones almost imperceptibly mixed in. The tune I would most point to demonstrate that is the one that plays when you're looking through the telescope. It sounds like something someone would whistle to themselves to keep their spirits up while picking through the desiccated ruins of their childhood, which is kind of appropriate, I guess. That made no sense. The music is good, okay? The way Night in the Woods articulates its story to the player is superb, but that is meaningful only to the extent that the story it's telling is good. Talking about story is weird because it's extremely subjective. I mean, all games criticism is subjective, but story criticism more so because it's inherently more difficult to reach a consensus on something that relies on appeals to emotion. As a hypothetical example, say a recent entry in a 30-year-old franchise decided to arbitrarily blind one of its main characters in a desperate and transparent attempt to make the player feel bad without actually having to put any effort into it. Oh, and then, like 3 hours later, the game could decide one of the characters was a robot the whole time, without explaining how that is supposed to be relevant or important, and literally only references it so that the character can act as a fucking door key once and never again. $60, please! Again, we're just talking hypotheticals here. Now, someone like me would say that the only thing preventing such asinine and slapdash plot twists from fatally compromising this hypothetical game's story is the fact that there was essentially no story to compromise, but others would clearly disagree. But I digress. Let me say that no piece of media has affected me as much as Night in the Woods has. I've always heard people talking about how things like Gone Home or The Beginner's Guide had this profound effects on them, and I've always respected that and enjoyed games like that well enough, but until following May's journey through her hometown, I had never experienced something like that myself. And not for lack of media consumption, I mean I play a disgusting amount of video games. And I could stand to expand to more authors, but in terms of number of books, I've done a lot of reading. I guess it's just nothing has cut so close to my own experiences with depression, with growing up, with attempting to integrate into a society that I don't think I'll ever understand, with trying to adapt to a thoroughly insane world without going insane myself and failing miserably. I don't think anything has captured these feelings quite as well as Night in the Woods has. The way this game deals with the utter dread of becoming an adult in a world that insists it has no use for you, with the cruelty of an economy that will screech at you from every angle that you don't deserve to live if you don't have a job, while jobs that will actually allow you to do so evaporated long before you had a chance of getting one, the misery of having the rug pulled out from under hardworking people who find that their hard work is worth less and less with every passing year. To take such a thoroughly shitty situation and present it without pulling punches while still maintaining an unfaltering humanity is such an important achievement that I don't think I'm ever going to shut up about it. No matter how crappy and broken the lives of most of the residents of Possum Springs are, it never suggests that anyone deserves their unfortunate lot. To defer to a literary reference, if Kurt Vonnegut's novel God Bless You Mr. Rosewater was like twice as good and also a video game, and I say that with Kurt Vonnegut being my favorite author, it would be Night in the Woods. It's very good. Ratings are even more pointless here than they usually are, so let me just summarize. The only thing I don't like is the save system, and everything else is fantastic. The game has left me simultaneously jubilant and bummed the hell out in a wonderful sort of way all week. It's good as hell and I cannot possibly recommend it enough. Play it, or barring that, watch a Let's Play or a stream or something. Just give the game the attention it deserves. I'm done. I'm gonna go back and fucking play it some more. Bye.